My last few videos were centered on Bible stories explained. In this video, I will return back to biblical archaeology discoveries. We will take a look at the location of Sodom and Gomorrah. Please stay tuned. Where were the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah located? The two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah became infamous for the greatness of the sin of the people that once lived there and the tragic destruction that followed. The search for the location of the doomed sister cities continues to fascinate many scholars, historians, and Bible readers. The story of these sister cities served as a cautionary tale, Jude chapter 1 verse 7, against sexual immorality, as well as other sins such as pride, gluttony, and laziness, Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 48 to 50. Some of the following clues help in the search for these sister cities. Sodom and Gomorrah formed the Pentapolis of the cities of the plain, Genesis chapter 14 verse 2, of the Jordan Valley, which included Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. It was there that Lot decided to settle with his family after a dispute between his herdsmen and Abraham's over the land on which their herds and flocks grazed. Meanwhile, Abraham remained unsettled in the territory of Canaan. Sodom and Gomorrah were famous for the wickedness of its people as shown in Genesis chapter 13 verse 13, and by Genesis chapter 19, it was doomed by God to be completely destroyed. Lot was warned about his destruction by the two angels he protected from the men of the city. He was told to take his family and find refuge in the mountains. Another clue was when Lot pleaded for the angel to spare the little village called Zoar, so that he and his family could find shelter in the city. This request was granted, and according to Genesis chapter 19 verse 24 to 25, the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them along with the other cities and villages of the plain, wiping out all the people and every bit of vegetation. The destruction was so great that Abraham saw it as he stood in Mamre in modern-day Hebron, far off the west of the Jordan Valley. Lot and his daughters left Zoar later and temporarily lived in the cave in the mountains. But is Zoar and these cities key to finding Sodom and Gomorrah? Let's find out. For creation geologist Dr. Steve Austin, biblical archaeologist Dr. Bryant Wood, and other scholars, Zoar was the key to finding the doomed cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. To pinpoint Zoar and possibly Sodom and Gomorrah, they first needed to locate the region where the cities were built. The search for Zoar took them to the southern region of the Dead Sea, where the Jordan Valley is located, near the modern city of Saphi in Jordan. They looked for the cave where Lot and his daughters possibly lived in when they escaped Zoar and found the remnants of an ancient church named the Sanctuary of St. Lord, with a cave near it. It overlooked the modern town of Saphi, which made it possible that the town once known as Zoar is now named as Saphi. Zoar, or as Saphi, is the only town that is still in existence after thousands of years since the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Historical records shows that it was involved in commercial trade as recently as the 10th century AD. There are records on the ancient crusade map in Madaba in Jordan that place the location of Zoar in the 6th century AD. According to Isaiah and Jeremiah 15 verse 5 and 48 verse 34 to 35 respectively, Zoar was located in Moab. The Jewish historian Josephus stated that Zoar was located south of the Dead Sea, but Zoar was also described by the Arab tribes that lived there as Saphia. This points to the location of Saphi as former Zoar, making it the perfect jump-off point for finding the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. What about Dhra and Numeira? Are these the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah? The angels of the Lord gave Lot and his family enough time to escape the destruction. According to Dr. Steve Austin, they probably traveled for 6 hours to Zoar by foot.
He and other biblical scholars that support this theory retraced the steps of love and came to the conclusion that the ruins of Dhra and Numeira in Jordan are the possible candidates for the site of ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. Safi could be reached within 6 hours from Dhra by foot, and it was one of the biggest sites in the area that was settled by the time of Abraham in the early Bronze Age. The destruction that happened at the site was perhaps visible from Mamre in modern Hebron in Canaan, and its location was an excellent sister city site. The remains of Dhra is now just a mound with a cemetery right beside it. Geologists discovered that Dhra is located near an enormous fault line, and the site experienced massive changes in geology over the years. It was once a fortified city with a 21 feet wide defensive wall that has now collapsed and contained a temple of an unknown god. Wadi Numeira, the remains of an ancient city near the ruins of Dhra, is said to be the city of Gomorrah. Numeira, just like Dhra, had a collapsed fortification, border fort, and evidence of widespread destruction caused by fire or burnt deposits. Pieces of charcoal from burnt timber, possibly house beams, were found when the site was excavated, and in Numeira itself. 2 human skeletons that died from trauma, burns, and collapse of the structure were found buried on the site. Both places were destroyed during the early Bronze Age by ignition and collapse of structures, consistent with the fire and burning sulfur destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In addition, both sites were located near enormous border fault lines which contain a combination of combustible bitumen, petroleum, and natural gas. It is possible that what destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah was a super earthquake that spewed these destructive materials forced up by Earth's movement. But some of this evidence against the site of Sodom and Gomorrah also surfaced. Most archaeologists place the destruction of the 2 proposed cities during the early Bronze Age 3, which put them about 400 years before the biblical dates for their destruction. So, does this mean that these aren't the infamous biblical cities? Let me know what you think in the comment section. For more interesting biblical archaeology stories, please check the playlist here. Don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoy it. Remember to subscribe to this channel and enable notification for more insightful videos. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video. Peace.